Welcome back to another episode of Marty and Party with special guest. Episode 7, Dowdow. To my right is Dowdow. To my left is Party. Under me, gnawing on the boards, is the new puppy President Lincoln. We get into a couple good topics. We talk about a little Jets football and the firing that went on.
Hashtag fire Adam Gase.
The massacre that happened in what was it, the Meadowlands, or were the Jets away?
Yeah, they were in the Meadowlands.
The Meadowlands massacre. We talk a little about what's important on building a successful team. We talk a little Eagles football, and then we get into who's our two teams that we're cutting off of our 9. One's a pretty obvious one. The other one is a little bit of a shocker if you're not paying attention to football like we are. And then we get into our best bets of the week, where last week we went 1-1 on our best bets. And how about them Giants? Plus 385. Let's go. Well, stay tuned and thank you for listening to another episode of the Marty and Party podcast.
It's the Marty and Party podcast, presented by 4011 Sports.
Also, this season's been a disaster, right? I've said it for a while. I don't think they're going to win a game, but this week against the Raiders, it was different. You know, against the Patriots, that game was close, but never for a second did I think we were going to win. But this week, for some reason, I did, right? We took the lead, we gave the ball back to them, and then what do? We run a cover 0 blitz. Okay. Let me put this in context for you. So cover 0 is where you just man coverage on the outside, send the house, right? No safety help, nothing. So you're putting an undrafted rookie out of Nebraska, right, on a guy who ran a 3.2 40. What are you doing? The guy bit on a double move with 5 seconds left on the clock. It's just I don't know how much more I can take, but really what took it to a whole other level, right? So Greg Williams got fired. That's fine, whatever. Fireable offense, unprecedented play call. Lost the trust of his players. But then the report comes out that Adam Gase is actually the one who fired Greg Williams. What are you doing? The fact that Adam Gase can walk into the general manager's office, the owner's office, since both of them report to the same guy, since that's totally normal, what every team in the NFL is doing, right? He can walk in there and his opinion still carries weight, right? He said, I went in there and they all agreed with me. No. He told them to fire Greg Williams. They said, okay, we're going to do it. You know, earlier in this podcast, a few weeks ago, I remember talking and, Matt was asking me about, future Jets head coaches. At first, I was like 50-50 Gase stays. Then, I started moving away because there's no way you can keep him after this mess, right? Well, let me assure you, I am right back on the fence. I think it's a 50-50 shot they keep him. He is a garbage coach. He's a guy who missed Thanksgiving with his family to put up 6 points on the Bengals. This is a guy who is absolutely clueless. He has no respect from any of his players. I mean, how could you at this point? He's a joke of a human, a joke of a coach. He shouldn't even go near football for the rest of his life. But now as an organization, you're telling me you have faith in what he's talking about and his decisions. He should not be involved in these kind of decisions. This should have been Joe Douglas calling the owner, expressing his, displeasure with Greg Williams, and then that was that. Move on. There is a legitimate shot that Adam Gase is the future of this team, and that is horrible. That is a horrible statement to say. And even if we get Trevor Lawrence, the number 1 pick, what does it matter? If Adam Gase is coaching this guy, he will be irrelevant 3 years max. This organization has already done so much wrong by Sam Darnold, and Adam Gase has been a huge part of that. And you're telling me you might even consider keeping this guy around for the next go, this is ridiculous. We need a team builder, right? We need someone who can put complementary players together, who can build an offense that works off each other and works for a player's strengths. We don't need a guy like Adam Gase. You need someone like Sean McDermott up in Buffalo. You need someone like, I was going to say Doug Peterson, but he's not doing so hot. You need an Andy Reid. You need a Brian Flores. Can't believe I'm saying that. You need a CEO. You need a guy involved in all aspects of the team. I need someone who's going to build a team, not someone like Gase who actively destroys teams. Right? Look at Ryan Tannehill, which, it's going to be the go-to example when speaking to Gase for the rest of his career. He goes to the Titans, a team that was built very well by GM John Robinson and head coach Mike Vrabel, right? And look, he looks like a completely different player. And it's not just talent. It's not just coaching, right? It's about team building. And I think as long as Adam Gase is in the building for the Jets, they have no shot in hell.
So when you build a team, and when you see it now with Buffalo, you see a lot of teams making these big strides forward. It's tough to figure out, besides quarterback, what position is the position that you need to fill, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Everyone can say, oh, you need to play good defensively. It's not so easy. You can see how consistent or inconsistent defenses are year in and year out. Look at Buffalo. Their defense is struggling this year. The Tennessee Titans, I thought going into the season, was going to have one of the better defenses in football. Really, the only constants on defense that I can think of are the Steelers always have a above-average defense. The Colts have gotten their defensive woes figured out the last 2-3 years. And I think, like the Ravens, for example, they always seem to put together a solid defense. But let's focus on the offensive side of the ball, because that's how games are won and lost right now in the NFL is offense. What is the most important position to give a quarterback? Is it a left tackle? Is it a superstar wide receiver? Or is it a quarterback? I'm going to give you guys 3 examples of guys that have just been given to a quarterback recently. And I'm going to tell you, tell me when I'm wrong with where the team is turned around. Josh Allen getting Stephon Diggs this year. He's averaging now 70% completion percentage. He's actually putting up better numbers in the NFL right now than he did in college. Tell me another quarterback that does that. Next guy. Kyler Murray gets DeAndre Hopkins. And then the last guy, Baker Mayfield with Odell Beckham. He also got Jarvis Landry. You can see the importance that these wide receivers have on quarterback play. Even the Titans now with A.J. Brown. Seattle gets bailed out left and right by DK Metcalf. Is this the most important position to give a quarterback, or do you think it's somewhere else?
I think it's funny that you're the one bringing this topic to the boys, right? Because I definitely remember you saying a number 1 receiver is not important. But I digress.
It's absolutely a left tackle. It's an entire offensive line. That's the most important thing. Joe Burrow had plenty of weapons at receiver, didn't have an offensive line, and he is not playing for the rest of the year. Offensive line is the first and foremost.
But that's protection. That's not winning and losing.
I mean, they also drafted Jonah Jackson in the first round 2 years ago. So he had a left tackle. He just didn't have
I think that's
else.
more of protect, and I think it's a valid point. But I'm not winning a game based on a left tackle. I mean, Joe Thomas was on a 0-16 team, correct?
Yep.
And he's the best left tackle in football.
Yep.
Now, albeit they had a horrible quarterback.
And they had horrible everything else.
But the Jets have a pretty good left tackle, too. So, is that really the position that you think is the most important?
If you look at the 3 things you mentioned, you have Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Kyler, DeAndre Hopkins, Baker, Odell. If you're looking at this season only, the only quarterback that's winning with help from their receiver is Stephon Diggs and Josh Allen. Kyler and DeAndre are 6-6. Their team is not as good as what they should be. Odell's been hurt for half the year, and the Browns keep on rolling. Granted, they still do have Jarvis Landry, but Odell's the guy there. So it's not necessarily you need a number one receiver. I mean, it helps get other guys open. But, I mean, I would even say possibly having a better run game is better than, like, having a top 5 running back is probably more important than a top 5 receiver.
Well, top 5 running backs, off the top of my head, I can think of a few. I can think of Ezekiel Elliott on a struggling team.
I don't think he's a top 5 running back.
You don't think?
He hasn't been
he's
a top
paid
5.
like it.
Yeah, he could even be paid like it, but he hasn't played like a top 5 running back in years.
Alvin Kamara's on a winning team.
Yep, and I would rather have Kamara than Zeke right now.
Then you have obviously Derrick Henry's on an 8-4 team.
King Henry, Nick Chubb on a 9-3 team.
Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt, yeah, but I mean that's just
he's more of a complimentary running back.
Yeah.
Right,
and then
you're talking about top 5 running backs. I think I'd rather have a top 5.
And the Vikings have a good running back too, and they're not doing too hot this year.
Nope, that's why I think it's more important to have a better rushing attack. Like how we were saying, like it's not so much about the big marquee players, man. It's about depth as well, depth and structure. Like the biggest outlier here was Stephon Diggs with Josh Allen, right? So Josh Allen, this guy coming into the season has had 3 games with a completion percentage over 70. He's averaging that for the season, right? He's by far and away having the best year of his career. He didn't have a completion percentage over 60. This year it's 70. Crazy. And I think the reason Stephon Diggs has made such a big impact right away is that, he was sort of, not the last, but one of the finishing complementary pieces into a team structure that they've built so well.
Now, we can go on to a team that doesn't have a running back, doesn't have a top wide receiver, but has a quarterback that got paid to like he was one of the best quarterbacks with the Philadelphia Eagles, them just announcing that they're moving on from Carson Wentz, at least for this week, and starting Jalen Hurts, a project at best quarterback that I think is going to have good success. And I'm going to go on record. I think he's going to have a good week this week and next week. But I think this is a guy that's going to be figured out pretty quickly in the NFL.
I think that it was a move that the Eagles had to make. I think that Doug Peterson these next few weeks are for his job. I think that he's going to need to show that he can get this offense having any sort of spark. He's essentially praying that Jalen Hurts plays well enough to blame everything on Carson Wentz, which I think is unfair. But he also has been playing like garbage.
Now, even if you blame everything on Carson Wentz, right? Even if it's
offensive line, man.
Even if it's all Jalen Hurts comes in and he plays great. He plays great. What do you do with Carson Wentz?
Yeah, you can't
get rid of him.
Now,
if you get rid of him after this year, you have like $65 million in dead cap.
I think this team
If you get rid of him after next year, it's like 25.
Now, if a team trades for him, if you're an NFL team, do you trade for him? I guess is the question.
I don't think the Eagles trade because they'll still have 25 to 30 million dead cap because of the trade, because of the salary, the way it works.
So there's
literally
it's like similar to what happened with the Giants with Odell Beckham, where they had to pay his signing bonus when they traded him, that they chewed up a lot of money.
Except this.
But now, what happened with the Jaguars when they traded Foles? The same thing.
Yep.
Yes.
They have to eat
which
a
is
lot
why
of money.
their team is very bad right now.
And
they shipped off everyone. Remember, they
the
got
dead
rid of
money
Calais Campbell, A.J. Bouye.
That's because they couldn't pay anyone.
Couldn't pay anyone.
And the dead money only holds on to you for 1 year, though.
Correct.
Right.
So, really, what you're talking about with the Eagles, if they had to move on from Carson Wentz, they're basically putting the 2021 season in the toilet.
Yes.
Right away.
Yes.
That's interesting.
But the issue is if this offseason, I'm not familiar with their free agents this year, but if they had 2 or 3 guys that they really would like to re-sign this offseason, You can't trade Wentz because all that money is going to go to the dead cap.
Well, I can tell you that looking at that team, there's probably not a lot of guys that are not expendable at this moment. They are playing a level of football that is so bad, and for a quarterback that I think gets $35 million a year to be
Very close.
to be producing so little is crazy. And the funny thing about Carson Wentz's career, I never understood the hype. I used to hear people, oh, Carson Wentz, top 5 quarterback, even when he was a prospect coming out of school. I'm like, this guy doesn't even play at a Power 5 team. He plays basically against like Division II schools.
You see, I don't think that really matters, right? I mean, a lot of good quarterbacks come from nowhere.
But this is beyond nowhere.
He was
Where
a
did Brett
better
Favre go?
quarterback than...
Southern Mississippi?
Yes.
Yeah.
But he was a better quarterback prospect than Jared Goff in my eyes. He just did everything better, and I still believe...
Oh, Jared Goff was also a bad pick.
Yes. Yes, that is a fact. But you would have also called it a bad pick if they probably took Carson Wentz one.
The only right pick in that draft, and I'll stand by it, was Jalen Ramsey.
This
And
year...
and Bosa, I think, now you look at him, and he could have went one. But those
For
quarterbacks
sure. I still think
he
he should have went one. But if you look at Carson Wentz's career, right? So this is the first year since his rookie season where he's thrown double-digit picks. You know, so I feel like for a few years especially, he's been helping to mask a lot of their deficiencies, you know? And then the whole Nick Foles magic happened, and the glow of a Super Bowl kind of washes away a lot of things, you know? And I think...
Did he get any of that $35 million from just playing in an absolute dysfunctional division?
I mean, the Cowboys were pretty good. They were over 10 wins for a while. Remember Dak's rookie year, 13-3?
Well, they won the division that year.
Yeah.
But besides that 1 or 2 years that Dallas was good, Dallas has struggled the last couple of years. The Giants have been dysfunctional the last 3 years. And Washington,
Same with the Redskins.
And
yeah,
Washington has been
there's
equally
definitely
dysfunctional.
Argument to be made, right? And he hasn't shown as much of what we've seen his sophomore year, when he was in the MVP conversation. We haven't seen that same player, I think.
He also has a lot of injuries.
Well, let's just round out the subject. Next year, week 1 of the NFL, who's the starting quarterback on the Eagles? I'm going to say it's Wentz.
Carson Wentz.
You can't. I mean, it really depends. I think if Jalen Hurts shows anything, literally anything, for the rest of the season, he'll start next year.
I actually still think you're going to see Wentz get playing time this week. I am so...
I think we're going to find out very quickly how much of the offense Jalen Hurts has a grasp of.
And why can't they just use Jalen Hurts like Taysom Hill?
They have.
And they're going to.
Well, I mean, the thing is they haven't, though. They say they will, but they don't. That leads me to
run them
believe...
on like 1 or 2 plays every game.
Right. And I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah, but
maybe I have too much faith in Doug Peterson there.
You do. He's not good.
It could be that. I don't think he's that bad of a coach.
He is, though.
So let's go. The next topic, and as promised, we're going to cut 2 teams from our Power 9 that we stated last week. I'm going to give you guys a list of what we did last week in no particular order. We have the Chiefs, Steelers, Cleveland, Packers, Saints, Titans, Seattle, Dolphins, and Colts. Now, 2 teams are going to get cut here. I'm going to start with cutting the first team, the team that I said and I predicted was going to get cut, and that's the Seattle Seahawks, who lost to the New York Giants. Actually, didn't give up a lot of points to the New York Giants, but 14 points against Colt McCoy is pathetic. You're not going to win the games. You're not going to go to the Super Bowl with that. And if you do go to the Super Bowl, if you're playing Kansas City or anyone on the AFC side, I'm very comfortable cutting them out right now. I don't think we're going to regret cutting them in 2-3 weeks.
I don't think Seattle has enough to go up against the Packers or the Saints in the NFC. I think they're leap years better than Seattle.
Defense is just not good enough, you know, and that type. You need a defense to win in January. That's it. That was a bad loss.
It's a telling loss.
It was a bad loss. I mean, if they won and it was close, it'd be fine.
They still could have found themselves on the chopping block even if they somehow won. But
well, I don't know. That defense is really good. That Giants defense is
I don't think
really performing.
Well, we'll see. We'll see where they play the next couple weeks. I don't like them. And then now this next cut on this list of teams, this is an interesting pick by us, where you take a team that has a pretty good win. The Colts beat the Texans.
It was an okay win.
But a report comes out that in the offseason, Phillip Rivers is going to have surgery on a broken bone in his foot. And I think that a injury like that to your quarterback is not sustainable for success in the Super Bowl when you're already on the fringe.
You know, we didn't really like the Colts to begin with. I think they were one of the last teams we even had in for our Super Bowl picks. I'm perfectly comfortable taking them out. I did say last week, though, that the Dolphins would be one of the first teams out, and I was wrong on that. I'll hold that L.
Well, they're on the fringe with the Dolphins, and I think the one team on the fringe right now is the Dolphins. But as I said, they have a huge game coming up against Kansas City. Do I project them to beat Kansas City? No. But if they do beat Kansas City here, everyone's going to put them on the list. So to have that safety net that we can cut them next week as part of our two teams that we're going to cut if they lose by a lot. But if they go out and beat Kansas City, we're going to feel very good about having the Dolphins on that list if they beat Kansas City. The other team I think we might be cutting at the end of this week, I'm going to come out and say it, I think the Saints. I think they're getting a ton of hype here. I think it's so funny. I've seen the NFL commentators recently saying they have the best defense in football because they've given up the least amount of points since Week 8. They played a practice squad wide receiver at quarterback one of these games. Give me a break saying, since Week 8, they're putting up these incredible numbers. 1 week, they literally gave up next to nothing in points because the guy who they were playing threw the ball 3 times and had 2 interceptions. How are you even saying that that's an NFL stat?
This is similar to how I felt about the Colts defense early in the year, right? So they were getting so much hype, and I was like, man, they haven't played anyone. And then Derrick Henry just comes out and brutalizes them. You know, and I just think that's... Again, you can only play who's on your schedule.
But
right?
don't
you can't
hype.
control that,
but don't hype a team.
Yeah.
Don't hype a team and say they've given up 8 points since Week 8 or something like that a game. When one of their games, you well know it's not even a backup quarterback they're playing. They played a practice squad game. The game should have never happened. If that was the Baltimore Ravens, they would have postponed the game. If that was any team besides Denver, that game doesn't happen. So you can't laud the defense for this outstanding performance they put up against a Wildcat the entire game. It's insane.
You know what? One team I think that's really benefiting from a lack of hype is Cleveland. I think, last year with all that hype and they just shriveled under the spotlight. I think this year they're doing well now that they're kind of out of it. But I don't think the Saints are going to be cut next week. Drew Brees is going to come back. Michael Thomas is healthy.
A 70-year-old Drew Brees.
That's fine.
Dolphins probably are going to get cut next week.
Well, the Dolphins might get cut, but I'll tell you what: if they lose by 3 or 4 to Kansas City,
big if.
That's you got to be happy with that.
I gotta say, the Steelers need to get their stuff together. Specifically, their offense.
Stink. I wanted to cut them this week.
You did, but
Pat texted me. He said, "I'm gonna cut. I want to cut the Steelers."
He literally said at the beginning. So Seattle.
I'm sitting at the Tennessee game, and I'm watching the Titans game, and I get a text. Steelers are frauds, and I'm like, all right, let's. Oh no, that was Monday, so I must have not been at the time. I was on the car ride home from Nashville.
With a little pupper.
And
How are you, Percy? Little sleepy boy. Oh, he's cash.
But let's get one more question in before we get to our best bets. Is there a team that we might have left off the list? Is there a team that you think isn't on that first 9? And I think a lot of people now are getting back on the Bills bandwagon. I'm not necessarily sold on them. Is the Bills, do you think, Is that a team that you regret not putting on the list?
No, not at all. We talked about Josh Allen and all the big strides he's made this year, but what leaves a bad taste in your mouth is the way they exited the playoffs against the Texans last year. His decision making was awful. It was god awful, right? And this year there's a lot less turnovers, but I still have to see how he performs in those type of situations. You know, with the game on the line, playoffs. Is he just gonna throw the ball behind him, or is he gonna, use his head?
I couldn't say it better myself. I think the playoff last year, I put a lot of stock in how people perform in the playoffs, and that week that he had against the Texans last week, me and Pat were actually at the Tennessee Titans New England Patriot game, and we were watching it on the big board over there, and the game goes into overtime, so we're actually sitting in freezing cold rain longer, waiting for the game to start, and we just watched Josh Allen absolutely stink it up for, I think, 2 overtimes? It felt like it was an eternity. So I think I don't regret not putting them on the list.
One team I think we might have missed. We'll talk about them more next week if they win, but the Bucks.
Tampa Bay.
I have absolutely not. They stink too.
They stink too. Now let's get to the best part of our show.
I like Todd Bowles.
Let's go. 7-4-1 on best bets on this show. 7-4-1. What did we do last week? 2 weeks ago, we went 0-3, and we were very critical of ourselves. We didn't hide it. We talked about it. This week, what do? We go 2-1, with one of those picks being the Giants at, I believe, plus 385. I was in Nashville right before kickoff. It slipped up to plus 400. So that is something we hit on. We also got the Buffalo Bills, who we were just talking about, at -1, so we hit on that. And the only thing we missed was the over-under in the Texans game, which is pretty surprising for us. We've been very good on the over-unders this year. We've actually been really good on all sides of the betting. But anyway, we are 7-4-1 on the show. We are 2-4 on upset picks. And we're going to kick it off this one with, I'm going to throw it to Pat, with who does he think our upset pick of the week is?
We've talked about this team a ton already on this podcast. Upset pick of the week is the Philadelphia Eagles over the New Orleans Saints at plus 245. As we've said, Jalen Hurts, new quarterback for Doug Peterson. This is a game that Doug Peterson cannot get blown out. He needs to show some life. If they don't show any life, he is gone this January. He can't keep his job. This is a must-win game for the Philadelphia Eagles organization as a whole.
Well, it's a must-win game for them if they even want to keep their season alive.
Their season's done.
But if you're in the locker room, you're very alive.
Yeah, but...
So, I do like the Eagles here. I think Jalen Hurts, week 1 in football, he's going to be tough to figure out for these... He's not going to be a fun guy to play with not a lot of tape on him. He's a big, strong guy who can make throws on the run. He's going to be difficult to figure out how to contain. Kind of like Lamar Jackson when he got into the NFL. Kind of like any running quarterback. It takes a couple weeks to adjust to them. And no one's really gotten that chance to adjust to him yet. So I think it's a nice game to start off with. I'm going to throw it to Brian for the over-under this week.
So we're going to go with the Cincinnati-Dallas over 42.5. I know what you're thinking. Two terrible offenses. Two terrible teams, really, going at it. But, these defenses leave a lot to be desired. Cincinnati looks better. I mean, obviously they're not going to put up the numbers they did with Joe Burrow, but they still look like a team. Dallas, I think they'll take advantage of Cincinnati's weak defense, especially their run D. I think Zeke Elliott will be in line for a nice game. This won't be a shootout or a close game or even an interesting game, but I definitely think it'll go over 43 points. 42.
No, you not like another thing about who's the quarterback for Dallas is Andy Dalton.
Revenge game.
Nice
I
little
love
game.
revenge games.
You can't put a value on that. And the last thing is a spread game of the week. If the Giants don't win last week against Seattle, this spread's at 5.5 points. The New York Giants versus Arizona, the spread is just too close. Arizona is undoubtedly a better team than the New York Giants. Their offense is a lot better. The Giants most likely won't have Daniel Jones. So I think you're getting a great value because of an upset that happened last week, and the Giants are trending in a way that you like to see, and Arizona's trending in a way you don't like to see. But here's the thing. They're both playing for a lot. Arizona's a better team. Arizona has a lot to lose if they lose this game. Larry Fitzgerald's back. DeAndre Hopkins is going to be ready to ball out. And Kyler Murray's a nightmare at quarterback to contain. I think at 2.5, Arizona is such a nice game to pick. So I think that's what's going to round it out. We're going to round it out with Arizona minus 2.5. Cincinnati, Dallas over 42.5. And the upset game of the week, the Eagles at plus 245. And just to say it one more time, 7-4-1 on the podcast. Not a lot of people are picking over 500. Even if you add in our upset picks into our picks, which is very unfair because we're only taking things over plus 200, we're still above 500. So this is a extremely hot podcast. I told you last week we'd get back on stride. We did just that. Thank you once again for listening to the Marty&Party podcast with special guest, special guest, Dow Dow. Talk to you guys next week.
Peace.